I'm gonna give this one a shot.
I don't know what you're about to do.
Welcome to the insanely colorful world of Bash Bandicoot, involving an orange man dressed in blue khakis and sneakers. He's been shot with a ray of evolution, but seems to be dumber than everyone else around him. That's right, Bash Bandicoot, the official, not official Sony mascot from Naughty Dog, which at the time was not owned by Sony. How'd I do? Little work.
It was there. You need to give so much less of a crap. It's like, oh, Sony presents Crash Bandicoot and Sang Bandicoot, who runs around with psychedelic fruits floating in the air, and his best friend's a magic mask man that's definitely not a black man. Together, they try and defeat the yellow guy who was bullied and has an N on his head. Sounds like they've got a thing against yellow people. No wonder Nintendo and Sony are having a fight right now. Coming to you this summer, Crash Bandicoot versus Asia.
All right, I'm gonna leave that to you. I don't think I could ever get to that level.
Cool.
This is another one of those stories that we find out years later after a game has been, it's been years since anyone's cared about a certain game, but I guess now all the contracts have expired, the non-disclosure agreements have gone away, and now we can actually talk about a few things. So, Andy Gavin, who was one of the founders of Naughty Dog, he had an interview, and he was asked, just what do you remember from the days of developing Crash Bandicoot? And he had an interesting story, one that I've never heard. I don't think this has ever come out before. So let's just go to Andy Gavin here. So I had this idea about how you could use virtual memory to basically allow much bigger levels. Like, Crash levels ended up being 32 to 40 megs usually, but the machine's memory was only 2 megs. Almost everyone else's games had to fit their levels into whatever your working memory was, like maybe a meg. I was pretty sure that you could basically get the stuff on and off the pages on the CD into memory in time for them to be in the background. What that meant is that Crash loaded 364K chunks. Typically, when you're playing the game, it loaded 364K chunks a second off the disc from various locations all over the disc. So you could hear the disc reader go, these are his words, E, basically reading the disc, if you'd listen to the machine as it's going and picking up these chunks of data constantly. And by the way, it, at least at the loading screen, I did hear quite a bit of jumping around. Like it seemed like not only was the disc spinning at the highest speed it could, you heard the laser like going like just moving all around. And I never understood, like, why don't you guys just kind of put the same stuff closer to each other on the disc and not have the laser move all around? But I guess that's just what we dealt with back then. So they went ahead and Sony ran Crash Bandicoot through like an analytics machine to see, what kind of effect will this game have on the PlayStation. And Andy continues, I think it was Kelly Flock, who was one of the heads of Sony. She was like, "You're doing what with the CD?" He's like, "This is only rated for like 400,000 reads." So basically, they said that if you were playing Crash Bandicoot normally, it would wear out your PlayStation's CD drive in 3 weeks' time. Well, I have to say, Crash Bandicoot was the first game that I bought for my Sony PlayStation, and that's not what killed my original PlayStation, believe it or not. And I used to play, I think my first two games were Crash Bandicoot and Twisted Metal 2. I think I probably ended up playing Crash Bandicoot a little bit more just because it was action adventure, 3D platformer, and that's all I had for a while as a kid. When you're buying your own games, you don't have much. So I played through it several times. It never made my system overheat. I did hear that the original PlayStations, like the ones released in 95, I think, they did have a problem with overheating. I want to say I got mine probably in 97, because I actually had the greatest hits version of Crash. I still have it on the shelf. But yeah, it would read. It would get kind of loud. Once the game started, I never noticed it. But it is interesting that they had this fear that it would burn out the PlayStation. And from what I understand, I don't remember hearing a lot of people reporting their CD drives dying. So, seems to have worked just fine.
Yeah, I know we had a PlayStation growing up. I can't remember when we got it. I think I was four or three, and we had the first Spyro game and Rayman, which were the only two games I was allowed to play. And
Spyro's a great game.
Spyro was great. I never made it past the first world because, fun fact, 4-year-olds can't comprehend video games. So I was just running around, just having a great time being a dragon and burning like little pixel people. And my brother was just sitting next to me. He was like, "You're terrible," even though he would have been like 6.
But I can imagine him saying that in his very dry, non-inflection voice.
Yeah, no, Rayman. I was pretty good at Rayman.
Which is, I would argue, a much more difficult game. That game has a lot of unfair stuff in it.
Does. It was very aggravating, but I played it a lot. I had to.
Gorgeous game. It still holds up very well.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say that something that I remember from the PlayStation days was all of my friends who had PlayStations. Like, I only ever bought the official Sony PlayStation memory cards. I want to say they ranged anywhere from $15 to $20 for a memory card, and you had to have a memory card to save your game. And they only had 15 blocks of it. A game like Crash Bandicoot only used 1 block of memory, but there were some games out there that would use as many as 3 or 4 or sometimes more blocks of memory. And when it came to that, I had several friends that they would have one game had that memory card for that one game.
I remember that for PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of memory cards.
Well, the PS1 memory card, I want to say that was 1 megabyte of information, and then with the PlayStation 2, they went to 8 megs, so it was 8 times the amount. But with that 1 meg memory card, practically everyone I knew with a PlayStation, they would always get the third-party Mad Catz or other brand of memory card that would have 4 times the amount of information or 10 times the amount of storage capacity. I think without fail, every single one of them told me later, there came a day where I went to load up my save and it was just gone. Or the memory card was not being read at all by the PlayStation anymore. It's yep. That's exactly why I stayed with the first party memory card. Yeah, was it more expensive? Yes. Did it give you less space? Yes. More reliable? Absolutely. My save cards, I bet you if I loaded up my memory card now, it would still read it and still have all my saves on there. So, yeah. It's one of my memories. Never had a... Also, my original PlayStation died because the spindle, the little part of the CD drive that you put on the center circle to hold it in place while it reads, disintegrated. Yeah. It literally just... Eventually one day, little pieces started breaking off of it until it just... completely.
There you go.
But you can actually replace it with a different spindle. So there. Also got a PS1 at one point. Those are cute.